Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova, watching the stars drift past the main window. The ship was 3 days out from Earth, heading toward the Kepler system for another routine diplomatic mission. Jake had done hundreds of these trips. Meet with alien governments, talk about trade deals, solve small problems between different species. It was peaceful work, and Jake liked it that way. "Captain, we're getting a message from the colony," said Lieutenant Amy Collins, from her station. She was young, maybe 25, with bright eyes and a quick smile. Like most humans in the space service, she believed in solving problems with words instead of weapons. Jake walked over to her console. "Put it through, Amy." The screen flickered, and Director Ben Parker appeared. He ran the human colony on New Eden, a farming world about 50 light-years from Earth. Ben looked tired, more tired than usual. His gray hair was messy and there were dark circles under his eyes. "Jake, thank God you answered," Ben said. His voice was shaky. "We need help. The Zephyrians are here." Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. The Zephyrians were a warrior race from the outer rim of the galaxy. They were big, with tough gray skin and sharp teeth. Most species were afraid of them, but humans had always managed to stay on their good side through careful diplomacy. "What do they want, Ben?" Jake asked. "They want us gone," Ben replied. "They say this system belongs to them now. They gave us 12 hours to pack up and leave, or they'll make us leave." Jake looked around the bridge. His crew was listening, and he could see worry on their faces. Dr. Lisa Park, the ship's scientist, was frowning as she thought about the problem. Commander Ryan Bell, who handled security, was checking his reports on Zephyrian military strength. "Wow, many of them are there?" Ryan asked. 3 warships, Ben said, "big ones. We counted at least 1,000 soldiers." Jake did the math quickly. New Eden had about 3,000 colonists, mostly farmers and their families. They had no weapons beyond basic tools and maybe a few hunting rifles. The colony's security force was just 12 people with light stunners. "We're coming, Ben," Jake said. "Hold tight. Don't do anything to make them angry." Ben nodded and signed off. Jake turned to his crew. "Amy, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them what's happening. Ryan, what do we have for weapons?" Ryan looked uncomfortable. "Standard defensive systems only, Captain. This is a diplomatic ship. We have shields and some basic energy weapons, but nothing that could fight 3 Zephyrian warships." "What about calling for help?" asked Dr. Park. "The nearest Federation fleet is 6 days away," Jake said. "Too far." Jake stared out at the stars, again. In his 40 years of life, 30 of them in space, he had never faced a situation like this. Humans were known throughout the galaxy as the peacemakers. They built things, healed people, and solved problems with smart thinking and careful words. They didn't fight wars. But as Jake thought about the families on New Eden, something strange happened. A feeling he had never experienced before started growing in his chest. It wasn't fear, exactly. It was something else. Something that made him want to bare his teeth and growl. "Captain?" Amy asked. "What are your orders?" Jake blinked. The feeling faded, but it didn't go away completely. It sat in the back of his mind like a sleeping animal. "Set course for New Eden, maximum speed." The Terra Nova changed direction, its engines pushing them toward the colony as fast as possible. But Jake knew they would arrive too late. The Zephyrians had given the colonists 12 hours. It would take the Terra Nova 16 hours to get there. Jake went to his private office and called Earth Command. General Alex Carter appeared on his screen. Carter was an older man, maybe 60, with white hair and sharp blue eyes. He had been in charge of Earth's defenses for 20 years, though those defenses hadn't been used for anything except rescue missions and natural disasters. "I heard about New Eden," Carter said before Jake could speak. "It's a bad situation." "What can we do?" Jake asked. Carter was quiet for a long moment. "Officially, nothing. The Zephyrians haven't broken any Federation laws. They're claiming the system was never properly registered to humans." "That's not true. I know. But proving it will take months, maybe years. The colonists don't have that kind of time." Jake felt that strange feeling again, stronger this time, So we just let them die? Jake, I know how you feel. But what can we do? We're not warriors. We don't have the weapons or the training to fight the Zephyrians. If we try, we'll just get more people killed. After the call ended, Jake sat alone, in his office. He thought about his grandfather, who had told him stories about the old days when humans fought wars on Earth. His grandfather had been a soldier once, before humanity joined the galaxy and gave up violence. The old man had said strange things sometimes about how humans were different from other species in ways they had forgotten. Jake had never understood what his grandfather meant. Now, sitting in the dark with that angry feeling growing inside, he was starting to wonder. Dr. Lisa Park knocked on his door. "Captain, I've been looking at some old files. I think you should see this." She came in and showed him her tablet. On the screen were genetic charts and brain scans. "I was curious about human evolution," she said. "Look at this. Our brains have parts that other species don't have. And our muscle structure is different too. We're built like..." She paused. "Like predators." Jake studied the charts. "What does that mean?" "I'm not sure yet, but I think we might be more than we appear to. Be Jake, all of us." Before Jake could respond, Amy's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, we're getting another message from New Eden." They rushed to the bridge. Ben Parker was back on the screen, but he looked different now. His face was hard and his eyes were cold. "Jake, the Zephyrians started early. They're attacking the outer farms. They're killing everyone, even the children." The feeling inside Jake exploded into something he had never experienced before. The world went red around the edges, and he heard a sound like rushing water in his ears. When his vision cleared, he was gripping the armrest of his chair so hard that the metal was bent. Everyone on the bridge was staring at him. "Captain?" Amy whispered. Jake looked at his crew. He saw the same angry feeling in their eyes that he felt in his own heart. Something was waking up inside all of them. Something that had been sleeping for a very long time. "Change of plans," Jake said, and his voice sounded different even to himself. Colder. Harder. "We're not going to New Eden to negotiate." "Sir?" Ryan asked. Jake smiled, and it was not the smile of a diplomat. "We're going to war." For the first time in 300 years, humans were about to remember what they really were. The Terra Nova dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Eden system. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, staring at the 3 massive Zephyrian warships hanging in space like metal sharks. Each ship was twice the size of his own vessel, bristling with weapons that could turn the Terra Nova into space dust in seconds. But Jake wasn't afraid. The strange feeling from before had grown stronger during the trip. It filled his mind like fire, making everything clear and sharp. He could see weaknesses in the enemy formation that he had never noticed before. He knew exactly how to attack them. "Captain," Amy Collins said from her station, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead Zephyrian ship." "Put it on screen." The bridge filled with the image of a Zephyrian commander. He was huge, even sitting down, with gray skin like armor and teeth like knives. His name was War Chief Crone according to the data files. "Human vessel," Crone growled. "You will leave this system immediately. This world now belongs to the Zephyrian Empire." Jake stepped forward. Something inside him wanted to show his own teeth, to growl back at this alien who thought he could threaten human families. "War Chief Crone," Jake said, keeping his voice steady. "Those are human colonists down there. Innocent people. Let us evacuate them safely and we'll leave." Crone laughed, a harsh sound like breaking metal. "There is nothing left to evacuate, human. We have cleansed the world of your weak species. Your colonists fought poorly and died quickly." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. 3,000 people, men, women, children, all dead. Around the bridge, Jake's crew was changing. Dr. Lisa Park's gentle face had gone hard as stone. Commander Ryan Bell was gripping his console so tight his knuckles were white. Amy Collins was breathing fast, her young face twisted with an anger Jake had never seen before. "You murdered civilians," Jake said quietly. "We conquered weaklings." Crone replied, "Your species is soft, human. You talk when you should fight. You show mercy when you should kill. This is why you will never be strong. Something snapped inside Jake's mind. The feeling he had been fighting rushed through him like a flood, bringing with it knowledge he didn't remember learning. Battle, tactics, weak spots on Zephyrian ships, ways to kill with his bare hands if he had to. For a moment, Jake saw himself clearly, not as a peaceful diplomat but as something else, something dangerous that had been hiding behind a mask of civilization. You made a mistake, War Chief, Jake said. What mistake, soft human? Jake smiled, and it was the smile of a predator. You woke us up. He cut the transmission and turned to his crew. They were all looking at him with the same cold fire in their eyes that he felt in his own heart. Amy, scan the planet. Are there any survivors? Amy's fingers flew over her controls. Yes, Captain, I'm reading about 50 life signs in the northern mountains. They're hiding in caves. Ryan, what's our tactical situation? Ryan studied his screens with an intensity Jake had never seen from him before. The security officer's peaceful manner was gone, replaced by something sharp and calculating. 3 enemy ships, Captain. Heavy cruisers with full weapon loads, but Ryan paused, his eyes narrowing. They're positioned wrong, too close together. If we hit the right spots, we could make them crash into each other. Jake nodded. Ryan was right, though Jake didn't know how he knew that. The knowledge was just there, like it had always been waiting in his mind. Lisa, what do you know about Zephyrian biology? Dr. Park looked up from her station. Her voice was calm, but there was something cold underneath it. Their ships use bioneural computers, Captain. Living tissue mixed with electronics. If we can disrupt their nervous systems, their ships will go dead. Jake finished. How do we do that? High-frequency sound waves, the kind that would drive most species crazy with pain. Lisa's smile was not the gentle expression of a scientist anymore. Lucky for us, human ears can handle frequencies that would kill most aliens. Jake felt pieces of a plan clicking together in his mind. It was like watching someone else think, someone who understood war in ways Jake Morrison, the diplomat, never could. Amy, patch me through to the survivors on the planet. A woman's voice came through the speakers. She sounded tired and scared. This is Mary Collins. Who is this? Captain Jake Morrison, Terra Nova. We're here to get you out. Captain, there are only 50 of us left. The Zephyrians killed everyone else. They hunted us like animals. Jake closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the fire inside him was burning brighter. Mary, I need you to listen carefully. Are any of you near the old mining equipment? Yes, we're hiding in the processing plant. Good. In about 10 minutes, you're going to hear some very loud noises from space. When you do, turn on every piece of sonic equipment you have. Every drill, every cutter, every machine that makes noise. Set them all to maximum frequency. I don't understand. You will, just trust me. Jake cut the connection and looked at his crew. This is going to be dangerous. Anyone who wants to leave can take the escape pods. Nobody moved. Ryan, target their bioneural processors. Amy, prepare to broadcast on all frequencies. Lisa, I need those sound patterns ready. As his crew worked, Jake felt something else stirring in his mind. Memories that weren't his own. Images of ancient battles fought by humans who had never seen the stars. Warriors who had conquered an entire world not with superior technology, but with superior cunning and the will to do whatever it took to win. The first human had looked at a saber-toothed tiger and decided to kill it with a sharp stick. Humans had fought wars against impossible odds and won through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. They had turned every disadvantage into a weapon and every weakness into strength. Somehow Jake knew all of this, as if he had lived it himself. Ready, Captain, Ryan reported. Jake settled into his command chair. Begin attack. The Terra Nova dove toward the Zephyrian ships like a hawk falling on prey. Jake's hands moved over the controls without conscious thought, guiding his ship through patterns of evasion that should have been impossible to know. The enemy ships fired, their weapons lighting up space with deadly energy. But Jake was already somewhere else, dancing between the blasts like he had done this 1,000 times before. Now, Amy. High-frequency sound flooded from the Terra Nova's communication array. Down on the planet, the mining equipment added its voice to the chorus. The combined noise hit the Zephyrian ships like a physical force. The bioneural computers screamed and died. The massive warships went dark, their weapons falling silent, their engines cutting out. "Lisa, are they dead?" Jake asked. "No, Captain. Just unconscious. The sound knocked out their nervous systems, but they'll recover in a few hours." Jake nodded. That was good. He didn't want to kill them if he didn't have to. But as he looked at the helpless enemy ships, part of him whispered that leaving them alive was a mistake his ancestors would never have made. "Amy, open a channel to Earth Command." General Carter appeared on the screen, his face shocked. "Jake, what happened? Our sensors show the Zephyrian ships are disabled." "We stopped them, General. The colonists are safe." "How?" "Our report said those ships were impossible to defeat with diplomatic vessels." Jake looked at his crew. They were all watching him with the same expression. They had felt it too. The awakening. The moment when something sleeping inside them had opened its eyes. "I think, General, that we're not as peaceful as we thought we were." After the connection ended, Jake sat quietly on his bridge. The strange fire inside him was settling down, but it wasn't going away. It was just waiting. Dr. Lisa Park came to stand beside him. "Captain, I've been thinking about what happened, how we knew what to do, how we could fight like that when none of us are soldiers." "What do you think it means?" "I think," Lisa said slowly, "that we never stopped being what we always were. We just forgot for a while." Jake nodded. Down on New Eden, they were rescuing the survivors. Soon they would head back to Earth with news of what had happened. The galaxy would learn that humans could fight after all. But Jake had a feeling this was just the beginning. The Zephyrians had kicked down a door that had been locked for centuries. Behind that door, something ancient and terrible was starting to wake up. And Jake wasn't sure if that was a good thing or the most dangerous thing that had ever happened to the galaxy. News of what happened at New Eden spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time in 300 years, humans had won a military battle. The peaceful species that everyone thought they knew had defeated 3 Zephyrian warships without losing a single person. On Earth, General Alex Carter sat in his office reading reports that made no sense. The Terra Nova was a diplomatic ship with basic weapons. It should have been destroyed in seconds. Instead, Captain Morrison had used tactics that military experts were calling impossible. Carter pulled up old files, archives that hadn't been opened in centuries. Records from before humanity joined the galaxy, when they still fought wars on their home planet. As he read, a cold understanding crept up his spine. Humans had once been very, very good at killing things. Meanwhile, War Chief Kron was not taking his defeat well. His pride was wounded, and his superiors were demanding answers. How had soft humans beaten Zephyrian warriors? The War Chief decided to prove that New Eden was just luck. He would attack 5 human colonies at once. The humans couldn't get lucky 5 times. The attacks began 3 days later. Zephyrian fleets hit Riverside Colony, Haven Station, Green Valley, Peaceful Harbor, and New Birmingham all at the same time. Each colony had maybe a few hundred people, mostly farmers and families. The Zephyrians expected easy victories. They were very wrong. On Riverside Colony, a man named Tom Bradley was fixing his farm equipment when the attack began. Tom was 50 years old, had never been in a fight in his life, and thought violence was wrong. But when he saw Zephyrian soldiers shooting at the school where his daughter was learning, something clicked in his brain. Tom picked up a wrench and ran toward the soldiers. He moved like he had trained for this moment his whole life. Even though he had never trained for anything more dangerous than changing engine oil, the wrench became a weapon in his hands, and the first Zephyrian warrior he met died before he understood what was happening. More colonists joined Tom. A teacher named Jane Morris used a garden hose to blind enemy soldiers, then hit them with a shovel. An old man called Pete Wilson, who could barely walk without his cane, somehow moved like a young fighter and took down 3 Zephyrians with his bare hands. The colonists had no military training. but they fought like they had been, doing it all their lives. They used farm tools as weapons and turned their peaceful settlement into a deadly maze of traps and ambushes. At Haven Station, Commander Ryan Bell was visiting his sister when the attack started. Ryan had felt the change at New Eden, but he thought it was just stress from the battle. Now, as Zephyrian dropships landed around the station, he realized the truth. The peaceful man who had served on diplomatic missions was gone. In his place was something that understood war like breathing. Ryan looked at the colonists around him and saw the same transformation happening to them. Their faces were getting harder, their eyes colder. "Listen to me," Ryan told them. "You all know how to fight. You just forgot. But the knowledge is still there, waiting. Trust your instincts." A woman named Carol Hayes stepped forward. She was a nurse who had never hurt anyone in her life. "I don't know how to fight," she said. "Yes, you do," Ryan replied. "Close your eyes. Think about protecting your family. What would you do?" Carol closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were different. Dangerous. "I'd kill anyone who tried to hurt them." "How?" Carol looked around and picked up a metal rod from some construction work. She tested its weight and balance like she had done it 1,000 times before. "However, I had to." The battle for Haven Station lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 200 Zephyrian soldiers were dead or captured. The humans had lost 3 people. Back on Earth, Dr. Lisa Park was working frantically in her laboratory. The blood samples she had taken from the Terra Nova crew were showing impossible results. Their brain activity had changed. New neural pathways were forming, connecting parts of their minds that had been separate before. "General," she called Carter on her communication device. "You need to see this." Carter arrived within the hour. Lisa showed him brain scans from before and after the New Eden battle. "Look at these patterns," she said, pointing to the screens. "The human brain normally uses about 10% of its capacity, but during combat, our people are accessing areas that have been dormant for centuries." "What kind of areas?" "Memory storage, tactical analysis, threat assessment. It's like there's a whole other person inside every human brain, a person who knows how to fight and kill and win." Carter studied the scans. "Are you saying we all have a warrior inside us?" "I'm saying we all are warriors, General. We just covered it up with civilization." But it never went away. The reports from the 5 colony battles confirmed Lisa's theory. Ordinary humans with no military training were fighting like professional soldiers. They were using tactics they had never learned, weapons they had never practiced with, and strategies that military academies would call genius. On Green Valley, a group of schoolchildren had defeated adult Zephyrian warriors using nothing but rocks and slingshots. The children moved in formation like they had been trained by expert commanders. At Peaceful Harbor, the colonists had built traps and defensive positions that military engineers said were perfect examples of advanced fortification. None of the colonists were engineers. New Birmingham's defenders had used psychological warfare, making sounds and using light patterns that drove the attacking Zephyrians into panic. How did farmers know how to break enemy morale? Captain Jake Morrison received orders to investigate the colony battles. As the Terra Nova traveled from system to system, Jake interviewed survivors and studied battle sites. What he found disturbed him. The humans weren't just winning, they were enjoying it. At Haven Station, Jake spoke with Carol Hayes, the nurse who had become a warrior. She was back to her gentle manner, but Jake could see the change in her eyes. "How did you know what to do?" Jake asked. Carol thought for a moment. "It was like remembering a dream. Like I had always known, but I had to remember to remember." "Do you regret it? The killing?" Carol looked at her hands. "I should, but I don't. When I was fighting, I felt complete, like I was finally being who I really am." Jake talked to dozens of colonists and heard the same story over and over. The moment combat began, they stopped being peaceful farmers and teachers and became something else. Something that understood violence in ways they had never been taught. Dr. Lisa Park joined Jake on the Terra Nova to study the phenomenon firsthand. As they traveled, she made more discoveries. Jake, look at this, she said, showing him genetic analysis results. Human DNA contains information patterns that match no other known species. We're not just evolved from predators, we're evolved from the most successful predators our planet ever produced. What does that mean? It means every human carries the genetic memory of every human who came before them. Every warrior, every hunter, every survivor who lived long enough to have children. Their knowledge is locked in our genes, waiting for the right trigger to wake it up. And the Zephyrians provided that trigger. Exactly. By threatening us, they activated defense mechanisms that have been sleeping for 300 years. Jake thought about his grandfather's old stories, about humans who had conquered a planet full of dangerous animals and hostile environments, about warriors who never gave up, never surrendered, and never stopped fighting until they won. Lisa, are we still human? She looked at him with eyes that held both gentleness and something much more dangerous. We're more human than we've been in centuries, Jake. This is who we really are. The peaceful part was just pretending. As they traveled back toward Earth, more reports came in. The Zephyrians were retreating from human space, but it was too late. Other alien species had noticed what was happening. The galaxy was starting to understand that humanity was not what it appeared to be. Some species were afraid. Others were curious. A few were angry that humans had been hiding their true nature for so long. But Jake knew the real awakening was just beginning. The colonists were going back to their farms and schools, but they were different now. They remembered what it felt like to be dangerous. And somewhere in the back of their minds, the warrior was still awake, still watching, still ready. The temple door had opened just a crack, and something ancient was looking out at the galaxy with hungry eyes. Jake wondered if it would ever go back to sleep. On Earth, General Carter was reading military histories and making plans. The galaxy had seen what humans could do when they were surprised and desperate. Soon they would see what humans could do when they were prepared and angry. And that, Carter thought as he studied battle plans that seemed to write themselves, was going to change everything. War Chief Kron stood before the High Council of the Zephyrian Empire, trying to explain how his mighty fleet had been defeated by farmers and shopkeepers. The council chamber was filled with the most powerful warriors in Zephyrian space, and they were not happy. High Warlord Vash, the supreme commander of all Zephyrian forces, leaned forward in his massive chair. His scarred face showed the anger that was building inside him. You tell us that soft humans defeated our warriors, Vash growled. Humans who have never fought a war. Humans who solve problems with words instead of weapons. Yes, High Warlord, Kron replied, trying to keep his voice steady. But they have changed. They fight like demons now. They know things they should not know. Impossible. We have studied humans for decades. They are weak. They fear violence. They would rather die than kill. Kron thought about the colonists who had torn apart his soldiers with farm tools and bare hands. Not anymore, High Warlord. Something has awakened in them. Vash stood up, his huge form casting a shadow across the chamber. Then we will put them back to sleep. Forever. The Zephyrian Empire began to gather its forces. Every warship, every soldier, every weapon was called to join the largest military operation in their history. They would destroy humanity completely and show the galaxy what happened to species that dared to resist Zephyrian rule. But while the Zephyrians prepared for war, something much more dangerous was happening in human space. General Alex Carter stood in the command center on Earth, surrounded by screens showing human colonies across the galaxy. Reports were coming in from everywhere, and they were all the same. Humans were changing, not just the ones who had been in battles, all of them. On the agricultural world of green fields, children were playing war games with tactics that would impress professional soldiers. On the research station at Alpha Centauri, scientists were building weapons in their spare time, weapons they had never seen before but somehow knew how to make. General, Dr. Lisa Park called from her workstation. I'm getting reports from the medical centers. Human brain activity is increasing across all colonies. The neural pathways we discovered are activating in people who have never been in combat. Carter walked over to look at her data. How is that possible? I think it's spreading, General, like a signal being passed from one person to another. Every human who awakens somehow helps awaken others. Carter felt a chill run down his spine. If Lisa was right, then humanity was undergoing a transformation that went far beyond a few military victories. They were becoming something new, or maybe something very, very old. Sir, Lieutenant Amy Collins called from the communication station. She had been promoted after the New Eden incident and transferred to Earth Command. We're receiving a transmission from Captain Morrison. Jake Morrison's face appeared on the main screen. He was aboard the Terra Nova somewhere in the outer systems, but he looked different, harder. His eyes held a cold intelligence that had not been there before. General, Jake said, we have a problem. The Zephyrians are massing their entire fleet. Our scouts report over 3,000 warships gathering at the edge of their space. How long before they reach Earth? Carter asked. 2 weeks, maybe less. General, they're not just coming to defeat us. They want to wipe out every human in the galaxy. Carter nodded grimly. He had expected this. The Zephyrians could not allow their defeat to stand. Their entire culture was built on being the strongest, the most feared. If word spread that humans could beat them, other species might start to rebel. Jake, I'm recalling all human ships to Earth. We're going to make our stand here. With respect, General, I have a better idea. Carter raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Don't wait for them to come to us. Let me take a fleet to meet them in deep space. Jake, they outnumber us 100 to 1. That would be suicide. Jake smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. Would it? General, I've been studying our people, watching how they fight. We're not the same species we were 6 months ago. We remember things now, old things. What kind of things? How to hunt in packs, how to turn an enemy's strength against them, how to win battles we should lose. Jake's voice grew colder. How to make other species afraid of us. Carter thought about it. Every military simulation showed that humanity could not win a direct confrontation with the Zephyrian fleet. But every simulation had also shown that humans could not win any of the battles they had already won. What do you need? Carter asked. Every ship we have, every human who can fight. And General, trust me to do what needs to be done. Within days, the largest human fleet in history was assembled. 300 ships, from massive exploration vessels to tiny scout craft. It should have been hopeless against 3,000 Zephyrian warships, but the humans who crewed those ships were not the same people who had joined the space service to explore and make peace. They were something else now, something that understood war like breathing. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova, now the flagship of the human fleet. Around him, his crew worked with deadly efficiency. Dr. Lisa Park had transformed her medical bay into a tactical analysis center. Commander Ryan Bell had become a master of space combat, coordinating attacks with an expertise he had never learned. The two fleets met in the empty space between star systems. The Zephyrian force was massive, a wall of metal and weapons that stretched across space like a dark ocean. The human fleet looked tiny in comparison. High Warlord Vash opened communications, his huge face filling the screens of every human ship. Humans, he growled, you have caused enough trouble. Surrender now and we will make your deaths quick. Jake Morrison stepped forward to reply, but the voice that came from his mouth was not quite his own. It was older, colder, and filled with the accumulated rage of every human who had ever been threatened. Zephyrian, Jake said, you made a mistake. You thought we were prey. But we're not prey, we never were. We're predators who decided to be civilized. You've reminded us why that was a bad idea. Vash laughed. You talk big for someone who is about to die. Look at your pathetic fleet. You are outnumbered and outgunned. What can you possibly do against us? Jake's smile was the smile of a wolf looking at sheep. We can show you why humans conquered an entire planet full of things that wanted to eat us. The battle that followed was not like any space combat in recorded history. The humans did not fight like a fleet. They fought like a pack of hunters, each ship knowing exactly where to be and when to be there without any communication between them. The Zephyrian ships were bigger and stronger, but they fought like individuals. Each captain tried to prove his own courage and skill. The humans fought as one mind with 300 bodies turning the enemy's pride against them. Jake Morrison's ship dove through the center of the Zephyrian formation, drawing fire from dozens of warships. But where those ships expected to find an easy target, they found a trap. Human vessels appeared from every direction, striking at weak points with surgical precision. Dr. Lisa Park had analyzed Zephyrian ship designs and found their weaknesses. Commander Ryan Bell had planned attack patterns that used those weaknesses like weapons, and Jake Morrison led the assault with instincts that came from somewhere deeper than training. The battle lasted 8 hours. When it was over, half the Zephyrian fleet was destroyed or disabled. The rest were running for home as fast as their engines could carry them. High Warlord Vash's ship was dead in space, its engines gone, and its weapons silent. Jake Morrison's boarding party found the Zephyrian commander sitting in his ruined bridge, staring at nothing. "How?" Vash whispered when he saw Jake. "How did you do this?" Jake looked at the defeated alien with eyes that held no mercy. "We remembered who we are. We're not the peaceful species you thought you knew. We're the species that looked at a world full of monsters and decided to become the biggest monster of all. Your people will never accept this," Vash said. "They chose peace. They will reject what you have become." Jake's laugh was cold as winter. "Look around, Warlord. Every human in this fleet feels what I feel. The awakening is spreading to every human world. Soon we'll all remember what we used to be." "And what was that?" "The thing that every other species on our planet was afraid of. The thing that turned every disadvantage into a weapon and every enemy into a lesson. We were the predators that other predators had nightmares about." Jake leaned closer to the defeated Zephyrian. "And now, thanks to you, we remember." News of the victory spread across the galaxy faster than light. The species that had destroyed the most powerful military force in known space was not a warrior, race from some distant star. It was humanity. The peaceful, gentle humans who had been living quietly among the stars for 3 centuries. But as reports came in from human colonies across the galaxy, it became clear that something unprecedented was happening. Every human settlement was reporting the same thing. Their people were changing, awakening, remembering things they had never learned. The temple door had not just opened, it had been torn from its hinges. And what was emerging was not the peaceful species the galaxy thought it knew, but something far older and infinitely more dangerous. Something that had been sleeping in human DNA for 300 years, dreaming of war and waiting for someone to be foolish enough to wake it up. The Zephyrians had wanted to pia. 6 months after the Great Battle, the galaxy was a very different place. The Zephyrian Empire had surrendered completely, their surviving ships limping back to their home worlds with news that would change everything. The most feared warrior, race in known space, had been crushed by farmers and teachers who remembered how to fight. Captain Jake Morrison sat in his office aboard the Terra Nova, reading reports from across human space. Every colony, every station, every human settlement was reporting the same thing. Their people had changed. The awakening that started at New Eden had spread to every human in the galaxy. But it was not what Jake had expected. Instead of becoming a race of savage warriors, humans had become something else, something more dangerous. They had learned to control their awakened nature, to use it only when needed. The sleeping giant had opened its eyes, looked around, and decided to go back to sleep. But now it was sleeping lightly, ready to wake up at the first sign of trouble. Dr. Lisa Park knocked on Jake's door and entered without waiting for permission. She looked tired but satisfied, like someone who had finally solved a puzzle that had been bothering her for years. "Jake, I finished my analysis of what happened to us," she said, sitting down across from his desk. "And? We didn't become monsters. We became what we were always meant to be. Guardians." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Guardians?" Lisa pulled out her tablet and showed him brain scans and genetic charts. "Look at this, the changes in our brains aren't permanent. The warrior instincts are still there, but they're controlled now. We can access them when we need to fight, but we can also turn them off when we need to be peaceful. So we're like switches that can be turned on and off? More like guard dogs. Gentle and friendly most of the time, but absolutely deadly when someone threatens our pack. Jake thought about this. It made sense. In all the battles they had fought, humans had never lost control completely. They had been ruthless and efficient, but they had also shown mercy when the fighting was over. They had killed when they had to, but they had not enjoyed the killing itself. What about the rest of the galaxy? Jake asked. How are they taking the news? Lisa's expression grew serious. They're scared, Jake. Really scared. For 300 years they thought they knew what humans were. Now they realized they were wrong about everything. Jake understood. The galaxy had spent centuries seeing humans as the peaceful mediators, the gentle builders, the species that could be trusted to settle disputes without violence. Now they knew that every human they had ever met was carrying the genetic memories of the most successful predators their planet had ever produced. General Carter wants to see you, Lisa said. There's a meeting of the Galactic Council tomorrow. They want to discuss the human situation. Jake sighed. He had been expecting this. The galaxy needed to decide what to do about humanity now that the truth was out. The next day, Jake found himself standing before the Galactic Council, the governing body that included representatives from over 200 species. The great chamber was filled with aliens of every shape and size, all of them staring at him with expressions ranging from fear to curiosity to barely hidden anger. Ambassador Khalith, a tall insectoid creature from the Vegan system, spoke first. His voice was high and sharp like the sound of breaking glass. Captain Morrison, Khalith said, your species has deceived the galaxy for 3 centuries. You presented yourselves as peaceful when you are actually the most dangerous predators in known space. Jake stood calmly, his hands clasped behind his back. The warrior inside him was awake but quiet, watching for threats but not seeking them. We never lied to you, Ambassador, Jake replied. We are peaceful. We chose to be peaceful. That choice has not changed. But you could change it again, said Representative Thok, a massive bear-like creature from the Rigel system. You could decide tomorrow to conquer the galaxy and none of us could stop you. We could, Jake agreed, but we won't. How can we trust you? Demanded Counselor Yeth, a snake-like being whose species had been enemies of the Zephyrians. You hid your true nature from us. What else are you hiding? Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking about how to explain something that he was still learning to understand himself. We didn't hide our nature, he said finally. We controlled it. There's a difference. Every human has the capacity for violence, yes. But we also have the capacity for choice, and we choose peace. Until someone attacks you, Thok pointed out. Yes, Jake said simply. If you threaten innocent people, if you try to hurt children or destroy families, then we will fight, and we will win. But if you leave us alone, if you treat us with respect, then you have nothing to fear from us. Ambassador Khalith's antennae twitched nervously. And if we decide that humans are too dangerous to be allowed to exist. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Jake's expression did not change, but something cold and deadly flickered behind his eyes. Then you would be making the same mistake the Zephyrians made, Jake said quietly. You would be waking, something that prefers to sleep. The council chamber was silent for a long moment. Finally, Elder Zoran, the oldest member of the council, spoke. His voice was weak with age, but his words carried weight. In my 800 years of life, Zoran said, I have seen many species rise and fall. I have watched empires build themselves on fear and crumble when that fear was challenged. But I have never seen what I see in humans. And what is that? Jake asked. The strength to choose weakness, the power to be gentle. Most species become peaceful because they must. Humans became peaceful because they wanted to. That is far more impressive than any military victory. Jake nodded respectfully to the elder. However, Zoran continued, the galaxy must know that this choice can be revoked. We must know the rules of engagement with your species. Jake thought about this. It was a fair request. The rules are simple, he said. Leave us alone, and we will leave you alone. Treat us with respect, and we will treat you with respect. But threaten innocent people, especially human families, and you will discover why every predator on our planet learned to fear us. And if someone attacks you by accident, ask Counselor Yeth. If there is a misunderstanding, then we will talk first and fight only if talking fails. We don't want war, we never wanted war. But we are very, very good at it when we have to be. The Council voted that day to establish new protocols for dealing with humanity. Humans would remain members of the Galactic Federation, but with special status. They would continue to serve as mediators and peacekeepers, but other species would understand what they really were. After the meeting, Jake walked through the Council station with Commander Ryan Bell and Dr. Lisa Park. They passed groups of aliens who watched them with new eyes. Fear, yes, but also respect. Do you think they'll ever trust us again? Ryan asked. I don't think they ever really trusted us before, Lisa replied. They just thought we were harmless. Now they know we're not harmless. But they also know we choose not to be harmful. That's better than trust. That's respect. Jake nodded. Besides, trust has to be earned. We'll earn it. As they walked, Jake thought about the future. Humanity had revealed its true nature to the galaxy, but that nature was more complex than anyone had imagined. They were predators, yes, but they were predators who had chosen to be gardeners. They were warriors who preferred to build rather than destroy. The temple door had opened, the sleeping giant had awakened, and the galaxy had seen what humans could do when pushed too far. But the giant had chosen to go back to sleep, confident that it could wake up again if needed. Years passed. The galaxy settled into a new normal. Humans continued to serve as peacekeepers and mediators, but now everyone understood the strength behind their gentle words. When humans said please, other species listened, because they knew what or else meant. The Zephyrian Empire rebuilt itself as a peaceful trading confederation. They had learned the hard way that some species should not be challenged. Other, aggressive races looked at what had happened to the Zephyrians and decided that conquest was not worth the risk. Jake Morrison eventually retired from active service and became an ambassador. He spent his days solving disputes between alien species who respected human judgment because they understood human strength. Dr. Lisa Park continued studying the human transformation and wrote books about the balance between power and restraint. Her work became required reading in xenobiology departments across the galaxy. Commander Ryan Bell founded the Human Defense Corps, an organization dedicated to protecting innocent people of all species. Their motto was simple: we guard the guardians. And General Alex Carter wrote the Human Military Doctrine, a document that was studied by military leaders throughout the galaxy. Its first line read, "We are gardeners who remember how to be wolves." The galaxy learned to live with humanity's dual nature. They understood that humans were dangerous, but they also understood that humans chose not to be, and that choice made every day by millions of humans across thousands of worlds was what made them the most trusted peacekeepers in galactic history. The temple door was closed again, but never locked. Inside, the war god slept peacefully, dreaming of gardens and families and the simple pleasure of building things instead of breaking them. But if someone was foolish enough to kick down that door again, the Galaxy N, the silver ship cut through Earth's atmosphere like a knife through water. It left no trail, made no sound, and seemed to absorb the sunlight rather than reflect it. Inside, Ambassador Nelric stood motionless at the viewing port, watching the blue planet grow larger. His pale gray skin and large dark eyes showed no emotion. Astrians had evolved beyond such primitive displays thousands of years ago. "We are approaching the designated landing zone," said Valerian, the security officer. "The humans have cleared the area as requested." Nelric nodded slightly. "Remember the protocol: minimal physical contact, no consumption of their food or drink, limited exposure to their entertainment and art forms." He turned to face the 6 other members of his diplomatic team. "The Council selected us because of our exceptional mental discipline. We observe, we negotiate, we establish formal relations. Nothing more. The Astrian Council had debated for decades about whether to contact Earth. Humans were considered primitive, violent, emotional, unpredictable. But they were also advancing quickly, and their creativity made them valuable potential allies. The Council finally decided it was better to establish controlled contact now than wait until humans developed interstellar travel on their own. "Ambassador, I've been studying their welcome ceremony," said Zephyr, the cultural attaché. "They expect something called a handshake. It involves brief physical contact." "I am aware," Nelric replied. "I will perform this ritual with their leaders only. The rest of you will use the traditional Astrian greeting." The ship descended toward a large open field outside Geneva, Switzerland. The location had been chosen for its political neutrality. Through the viewing port, Nelric could see the gathered crowd: government officials, military personnel, media representatives, and ordinary citizens kept at a safe distance by barriers. "Final preparations," Nelric announced. The team checked their translation devices one last time. These small silver discs attached behind their ears would convert their speech into all human languages simultaneously. The technology was just one of many that would impress the humans. The ship touched down silently. A ramp extended from its side and touched the ground. "It is time," said Nelric. "Remember who we are. Remember who they are. We are here to guide, not to be influenced." The 7 Astrians walked down the ramp in perfect formation. The humans fell silent. Nelric stood, 7 feet tall, towering over most humans. His long limbs moved with fluid grace. Behind him, the other diplomats formed a perfect arc. Susan Grant, the U.S. Secretary of State, stepped forward. She was a short woman with graying hair and a confident smile. "On behalf of Earth, I welcome you to our world," she said. Nelric inclined, his head. "On behalf of the Astrian Council and the 7 allied species, I thank you for your welcome." His voice was melodic, almost musical. "I am Ambassador Nelric. We come in peace and with hopes of mutual cooperation." Susan Grant extended her hand. Nelric had practiced this moment many times. He reached out and took her hand briefly. A strange sensation passed through him at the contact, a warmth that traveled up his arm and into his chest. He released her hand quickly, surprised by the intensity of the feeling. "Please meet Eric Powell, NASA's Director of Extraterrestrial Communications," Susan said, gesturing to a tall man with dark skin and short black hair. Powell also extended his hand. Again, Nelric felt that unusual sensation. It was not unpleasant, just unexpected. The briefings had not mentioned this physical reaction to human contact. The other introductions continued. The humans seemed excited, their faces animated, their voices sometimes rising in pitch. The Astrians remained calm, their faces composed, responding with measured words and minimal movement. "We have prepared accommodations for you," said Susan. "A building has been renovated to match the specifications you sent. It will serve as your embassy while you are here." "That is acceptable," Nelric responded. "We appreciate your efforts to accommodate our needs." A convoy of black vehicles transported the Astrian delegation to their new embassy. Humans lined the streets, waving, taking pictures, some holding signs that said "Welcome" or "Peace." Others held signs with less welcoming messages. Nelric observed it all with detached interest. The embassy was a modern building with clean lines and open spaces. The humans had done their best to follow Astrian design principles. The delegation would live and work here during their mission. "Your quarters are on the top floor, Ambassador," said Diane Wright, a human xenolinguist assigned to the diplomatic team. She was younger than the other officials, with light brown hair and intelligent eyes. "Each member of your team has private rooms. We've attempted to create sleeping platforms according to your specifications." "Thank you," Nelric said. "You have been very thorough." That evening, after the humans had left, the Astrian team gathered in the central chamber for their first mission conference. "Initial assessment?" Nelric asked. "The humans seemed genuinely pleased by our arrival," said Zephyr. "Their emotional responses appear positive." Their security is primitive but extensive, noted Valerian. I counted over 200 armed personnel. They're afraid of us, said another diplomat. With good reason, replied Valerian. Their history is filled with conflicts when different cultures meet. Nelric raised a hand, silencing them. We knew this mission would be challenging. Humans are unpredictable. That is why we must remain vigilant against their influence. He paused. Did any of you experience unusual sensations when interacting with the humans? The others looked at each other, then slowly several nodded. A warmth, said Zephyr. When the human called Powell showed me their art collection. I felt it too, said another. During the handshake. Nelric frowned slightly. We will document these responses and monitor them. It may be a simple biological reaction to their different body chemistry. Later that night, alone in his quarters, Nelric reviewed the day's events. He sent a brief factual report to the council, omitting mention of the strange sensations. It was likely nothing significant. As he prepared for the sleep cycle, he found himself thinking about the human Susan Grant's smile. There had been something in it, a warmth that went beyond the physical sensation he had felt. It was curious how the humans used their facial expressions to convey so much. Nelric lay down on the sleeping platform and activated the neural relaxation sequence that would give his mind and body the required rest. But instead of the usual immediate unconsciousness, he found his thoughts drifting. He saw Earth from space, blue and green and swirling white. He saw the crowds of humans with their diverse faces and colorful clothing. He heard their music, playing during the welcome ceremony, something they had called a symphony. For the first time in his 300 years of life, Ambassador Nelric dreamed. 2 weeks had passed since the Istrian diplomatic team arrived on Earth. Ambassador Nelric sat in his office, reviewing reports from various meetings with world leaders. The strange dreams continued every night. He had not reported them to the council. He told himself it was because they were unimportant, but deep down he knew it was more than that. A gentle chime announced a visitor. Zephyr, the cultural attaché, entered the room. She carried a small object in her hands. Ambassador, may I speak with you about a personal matter? Zephyr asked. Nelric gestured to the chair across from him. Of course. Zephyr sat down and placed the object on the desk between them. It was a small sculpture of a human hand, carved from wood. I acquired this yesterday, she said, from a street vendor near the museum. Nelric stared at the sculpture. This was against protocol. Astrayans were not supposed to collect human artifacts. I find myself drawn to their art, Zephyr continued. It is different from ours. Imperfect. And yet there is something in it that our art lacks. Nelric should have reprimanded her. He should have confiscated the item and reminded her of the rules. Instead, he picked up the wooden hand and ran his fingers over its surface. The carving was rough, with visible tool marks. An Astrayan artist would have created a perfect replica, smooth and flawless. This was messy, like humans themselves. Have you experienced any unusual sensations? Nelric asked quietly. Zephyr's large eyes widened slightly. Yes, dreams. And when I listened to human music yesterday, I felt something in my chest. Like a vibration, but inside. Do not mention this to the others yet, Nelric said. I will consider how to address it. Later that day, Nelric met with Catherine Bell, a museum curator who had been assigned to show the aliens Earth's artistic heritage. She was waiting in the embassy's conference room with digital displays of famous artwork. Ambassador, today I thought we might explore how human art has evolved over time, she said with a smile. Nelric nodded. That would be informative. Catherine showed him cave paintings from prehistoric times, Egyptian hieroglyphics, Greek sculptures, Renaissance masterpieces, and modern abstract works. Nelric found himself especially drawn to the emotional works of Van Gogh. His paintings seem unsettled, Nelric observed. Yes, he suffered greatly in his life, Catherine explained. Many believe his mental anguish contributed to the power of his work. This concept was foreign to Astrians. Their art was about precision and harmony, not emotional expression. Yet Nelric could not look away from the swirling stars in the starry night. "Would you like to try creating some art?" Catherine asked. She placed a blank paper and some colored pencils on the table. Again, Nelric should have declined. Instead, he picked up a blue pencil and began to draw. He tried to recreate the logical patterns of Estrian art, but his hand seemed to have ideas of its own. The lines curved unexpectedly. Colors blended in ways he hadn't intended. When he finished, the drawing looked nothing like Astrian art. It was wild, uncontrolled. It was human. Catherine studied his drawing. "That's remarkable," she said. "It reminds me of the ocean during a storm." Nelric set down the pencil. "I must attend another meeting now." That evening, the diplomatic team gathered for dinner in their private dining hall. They consumed nutritional supplements from their homeworld, carefully avoiding human food despite the aromatic meals that had been prepared for the human staff. "Ambassador," said Alan Mitchell, the chief of security for the diplomatic mission, "we've arranged for a musical performance tomorrow. A small orchestra will play in the embassy garden." "That is acceptable," Nelric replied. "I have a concern," Valerian, the Astrian security officer, interjected. "Our exposure to human culture is increasing. I believe we should limit these interactions." "The council instructed us to learn about humans," Nelric countered, "to understand them better." "Understand, yes, but not to participate," Valerian said. His eyes narrowed slightly. "Some of our teams seem unusually interested in human activities." The statement hung in the air. Several diplomats looked down at their plates. "I will send an update to the council tomorrow," Nelric said. "We will proceed as planned until instructed otherwise." Later that night, Nelric found himself wandering to the kitchen area. The human staff had left for the day, but the smells lingered. He had noticed these smells for days but had successfully ignored them. Tonight, something drew him forward. On the counter sat a bowl of red objects. Apples, he remembered from the briefings. Fruits that humans consumed. He picked one up and examined it. The surface was smooth and cool against his fingers. Without fully intending to, he brought it to his face and inhaled deeply. The scent was complex and inviting. Astrians had a sense of smell, but it was primarily used for detecting danger, not for pleasure. This was different. He found himself wondering what the apple would taste like. "Ambassador?" Nelric turned quickly. Diane Wright, the xenolinguist, stood in the doorway. "I was just leaving some translation notes for tomorrow's meeting," she explained. "I didn't expect anyone to be here." "I was conducting research," Nelric said stiffly, setting the apple down. Diane smiled. "Were you thinking of trying it? It's perfectly safe for your biology. We did all the testing, remember?" "Astrians do not eat for pleasure," Nelric stated. "But you could," Diane said simply. "There's no harm in experiencing new things." She walked over and picked up the apple he had set down. With a small knife from the counter, she cut a slice and offered it to him. "Just once," she said. "How can you truly understand humans if you don't experience what drives much of our culture? Food, art, music. These are essential to who we are." Nelric stared at the slice of apple. Protocol was clear. And yet, he took the slice and placed it in his mouth. The sensation was immediate and overwhelming. Sweetness, tartness, juice, texture. His sensory receptors had never processed anything like it. He closed his eyes as the flavor spread across his tongue. "Good?" Diane asked. Nelric opened his eyes. "Interesting," he said. But it was more than interesting. It was transformative. That night, his dreams were more vivid than ever. He saw colors that didn't exist on his homeworld. He heard music. And for the first time in his long life, in the dream, Ambassador Nelric smiled. The next morning, a message arrived from the Astrian Council. It was brief and direct. "Reports indicate possible contamination. Delegation recall under consideration. Limit all non-essential contact with humans immediately. Nelric read the message twice. Then, instead of sharing it with the team, he deleted it. A month had passed since the Astrians arrived on Earth. The changes in the diplomatic team were becoming harder to hide. 3 more messages from the Council had arrived, each more urgent than the last. Nelric had shared edited versions with his team, removing the warnings about contamination and recall. The orchestra performance in the garden had been a turning point. The human musicians had played Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. The Astrian diplomat sat still and proper at first, but as the music swelled, something unexpected happened. Zephyr closed her eyes. Another diplomat swayed slightly, and Nelric, to his own surprise, felt moisture forming in his eyes. Astrians did not cry. Their tear ducts had evolved for cleaning the eye, not emotional expression. Yet here he was, experiencing what humans called being moved by music. That morning, Nelric called a private meeting with his most trusted team members. "We need to discuss our situation," he said, once they had gathered in a secure room. "We are changing." "Dreamed of my home last night," said one diplomat. "But in the dream, I felt sad to leave Earth. Astrians do not feel sadness." "I laughed yesterday," admitted another. "A human told a joke and I responded." Zephyr placed several small objects on the table: a seashell, a coin, a piece of colored glass, a feather. "I collect these now. They have no purpose except that I find them beautiful." Nelric nodded. "The Council suspects. They have mentioned contamination and possible recall." "They fear we are becoming like humans," Valerian said from the doorway. No one had noticed him enter. "And they are right to fear it." The room fell silent. Valerian had always been the most traditional member of the team, the most resistant to human influence. "You hid the true contents of the Council messages," Valerian continued, looking at Nelric. "I have been monitoring your communications." "You spied on the ambassador?" Zephyr asked, standing up. "I protected our mission," Valerian countered. "Our purpose here is to observe and guide, not to be changed. I have sent my own report to the Council. They will recall us immediately." Nelric felt something new, a heat in his chest, a tightening of his muscles. Anger. He had read about this emotion but never experienced it. "You had no right," Nelric said, his voice lower than usual. "I had every right," Valerian replied. "You are compromised, Ambassador. You all are." He looked around the room. "You eat their food, you listen to their music, you create art, you dream, you feel. You are no longer Astrian." Zephyr stepped toward Valerian. "We are still ourselves. We are just more than we were." "Less," Valerian corrected. "You have regressed to a primitive state. The Council will decide what to do with you all." He turned and left the room. The remaining diplomats looked at each other in silence. "What will happen to us?" someone finally asked. "The Council will likely order examinations, perhaps quarantine," Nelric said. "They will want to study these changes, determine if they can be reversed." "Do we want them reversed?" Zephyr asked quietly. No one answered. The question hung in the air. That afternoon, Nelric met with Susan Grant, the U.S. Secretary of State. They had been negotiating trade agreements, but Nelric found it hard to focus. "Ambassador, is everything all right?" Susan asked. "You seem distracted." "Today." In the past, Nelric would have denied any personal difficulty. Today, he hesitated, then spoke. "My team is experiencing unexpected adjustments to Earth." Susan nodded. "We've noticed some changes. Your cultural attaché attending concerts. Your science officer asking about our literature. You trying our food. These changes concern our leadership," Nelric admitted. "Are they harmful changes?" Nelric considered this. "Not harmful, no, but unprecedented. Astrians have evolved beyond emotional responses. We consider it a higher state of being. Yet here, on Earth, those responses are returning." Susan leaned forward. "Perhaps they're not gone, just dormant. Perhaps being emotionless isn't actually a higher state. This idea was revolutionary to Nelric. For thousands of years, Astrians had believed their evolution away from emotions was progress. Could they have been wrong? Their conversation was interrupted when Alan Mitchell, the human security chief, entered the room urgently. "Madam Secretary, Ambassador, we have a situation," he said. "One of the Astrian diplomats is requesting asylum." "Asylum?" Susan asked, surprised. "Which diplomat?" Nelric demanded. "Zephyr," Alan replied. "She came to our embassy 20 minutes ago. She says the Astrian Council is recalling your delegation and she does not wish to return." Nelric stood up. "I need to speak with her." At the human embassy, Zephyr waited in a private room. When Nelric entered, she looked up with clear anxiety on her face, an expression no Astrian would have shown a month ago. "Ambassador, I cannot go back," she said immediately. "Not now. Not after experiencing all this." She gestured around her, indicating Earth in general. "The Council will see this as confirmation of contamination," Nelric said. "Is that what this is? Contamination? Or is it awakening?" Zephyr picked up a small music player a human had given her. "Listen to this and tell me it is not beautiful." She played a piece of human music, something called jazz. The complex rhythms and improvisation were unlike anything in Astrian culture. Their music was mathematical, precise. This was wild and free. "I feel when I hear this," Zephyr said. "I feel alive." Before Nelric could respond, his communication device activated. A holographic message appeared between them. The stern face of Council Elder Maxis. "Ambassador Nelric, your mission is terminated. A ship will arrive in 3 Earth days to bring the delegation home. All diplomats will undergo decontamination upon return. Prepare your team." The message ended abruptly. Zephyr looked at Nelric with wide eyes. "Decontamination will strip away everything we've experienced," she said. "Everything we've become." Nelric knew she was right. Decontamination would reset their neural pathways, erase the changes that had occurred. They would forget the taste of apples, the feeling of music, the wonder of art. They would return to being perfect, emotionless Astrians. "I cannot lose this," Zephyr whispered. "Please understand." Nelric did understand, more than she knew. That night, alone in his quarters, he stared at his reflection in the mirror. His face had changed subtly. The rigid composure had softened. His eyes showed feelings. A decision formed in his mind. He activated his communication device and sent a message to Susan Grant. "We need to talk, not about diplomacy, about asylum. For all of us who wish to stay. The Council ship would arrive in 3 days. Nelric had until then to choose, return to what he had been, or remain what he was becoming." As he contemplated this choice, he picked up the wooden hand sculpture Zephyr had given him and felt its rough surface against his fingers. For the first time, he fully understood what it meant to be human. Not weak, as Astrians believed, but brave enough to feel. The news spread quickly. 5 Astrian diplomats, including Ambassador Nelric, had requested asylum on Earth. Only Valerian and 1 other diplomat remained loyal to the Council. World leaders gathered for emergency meetings. The media called it the alien defection crisis. Nelric sat across from Susan Grant and Patricia Diaz, the U.S. President, in the Oval Office. The room was tense. "The Council is demanding your return," President Diaz said. "They say you are suffering from a biological contamination that has affected your judgment." "It is not contamination," Nelric replied. "We have changed. Yes, but through experience, not infection." "Can you prove that?" Susan asked gently. "Many people fear this could be some kind of alien disease affecting your minds." Nelric considered this. "Our medical officer has conducted tests. The changes appear to be the activation of dormant neural pathways, not the creation of new ones. These capacities were always within us, just suppressed." "Like turning on lights in an empty room," Susan suggested. "Yes," agreed Nelric. "The room was always there, just dark." President Diaz leaned forward. "The Council ship will arrive tomorrow. We need to decide our position quickly." If you grant us asylum, there could be consequences for Earth. Nelric acknowledged. The Astrian Council has significant influence among the 7 allied species. And if we return you against your will, we betray our own principles, President Diaz said. It's not an easy decision. After the meeting, Nelric returned to the embassy where his team waited anxiously. Zephyr had moved to a safe location under human protection, but the others remained. What did they say? One diplomat asked. They are considering our request, Nelric answered. But they fear Council retaliation. The humans should fear the Council, said Valerian, entering the room. He had been avoiding the others since sending his report. You are putting Earth at risk with this foolishness. Is it foolish to wish to grow? To experience life more fully? Nelric challenged. It is foolish to abandon thousands of years of evolution for primitive sensations, Valerian replied. Look at yourselves, you are becoming erratic, unpredictable. Like them. Perhaps unpredictability has value, Nelric suggested. Perhaps perfect order is not the ideal state we believed it to be. Valerian shook his head. The ship arrives tomorrow. The Council has sent Commander Vox to retrieve us. He will not be as patient as I have been. That night, Nelric could not sleep. He walked through the embassy garden looking up at the stars. Somewhere up there, an Astrian ship was approaching, carrying Commander Vox and his security team. Vox had a reputation for strict adherence to Council directives. Nelric heard soft footsteps behind him and turned to see Diane Wright, the xenolinguist. Couldn't sleep? She asked. Sleep has become difficult, Nelric admitted. Dreams are intense. That's part of being human, Diane said, sitting on a bench. The hard parts come with the good parts. Before coming to Earth, I never questioned our evolution, Nelric said, sitting beside her. We believed we had moved beyond emotion to a higher state. Now I wonder if we lost something essential. In linguistics, there's a concept called linguistic relativity, Diane explained. It suggests the language you speak shapes how you perceive reality. Maybe Astrian culture did the same thing, shaped how you perceive yourselves. A limited perception, Nelric agreed. They sat in silence for a while, looking at the stars. What will you do if they force you to return? Diane finally asked. I do not know, Nelric answered honestly. But I know what I do not want to lose. The next morning, Earth's defense systems detected the Astrian ship entering the atmosphere. It was larger than the diplomatic vessel, clearly a military craft. It landed in the same field where Nelric's team had first arrived. World leaders gathered in a secure facility to monitor the situation. Nelric and his team were brought there as well, separated from Valerian, who had gone to meet the arriving ship. On large screens, they watched Commander Vox emerge from the ship with 6 armed guards. He stood 7 feet tall, like all Astrians, but his posture was rigid, his movements precise. He looked exactly as Nelric had looked upon arrival. Valerian greeted him with the traditional Astrian salute. Report, Vox commanded. 5 diplomats have requested asylum, including Ambassador Nelric, Valerian said. They show signs of severe contamination, emotional responses, irrational attachments to human artifacts, consumption of human food, artistic expression. Vox's face remained impassive. Where are they now? Under human protection. The Earth governments are considering their asylum request. Unacceptable, Vox stated. Prepare to broadcast. A communication request appeared on the screens in the secure facility. President Diaz nodded, and the connection was accepted. Commander Vox's face appeared on the main screen. Leaders of Earth, I am Commander Vox of the Astrian Council. You are harboring contaminated diplomatic personnel who must be returned for medical treatment. This is not a political matter, but a health emergency. Return them immediately. President. Diaz stepped forward. Commander, we respect your concerns, but the diplomats have requested asylum, stating they are not ill but have experienced natural changes. We take such requests seriously under our laws. Your laws do not apply to Council citizens, Vox replied. The diplomats are not in a state to make rational decisions. If they are not returned within 6 Earth hours, we will take appropriate action. The connection ended. The room erupted in urgent discussions. Is he threatening military action? Someone asked. The ship he arrived in is not heavily armed, said a military advisor. But we don't know what appropriate action means in this context. Nelric stood up. I need to speak with Commander Vox directly. That could be dangerous, Susan warned. I know Vox. He follows council directives absolutely, but he is not unreasonable. If I can explain what has happened to us, he might understand. After much debate, a meeting was arranged. Nelric would meet Vox on neutral ground, a small building, at the edge of the landing field with both human and Astrian security present but at a distance. Before leaving, Nelric gathered his team. Whatever happens, know that what we have experienced on Earth has value. If we must return, they can decontaminate our bodies, reset our neural pathways, but somewhere inside we will remember. Zephyr, who had been brought to the facility for safety, touched Nelric's arm, a gesture no Astrian would have made before Earth. Be careful. Vox will not understand what we have gained. Nelric nodded. As he walked toward the meeting point, he felt fear, another new emotion, but alongside it was something stronger. Determination. He would fight to keep what he had found on Earth. Not just for himself and his team, but for all Astrians who had forgotten what it meant to truly live. Commander Vox waited inside the building, standing perfectly still. As Nelric entered, their eyes met. For a moment, Nelric saw himself as he had been, controlled, detached, empty. Ambassador, Vox said. It is time to come home. Nelric stood before Commander Vox in the small meeting room. Two beings of the same species, yet now so different. You will return with me, Vox said. His voice was flat, emotionless, exactly how Nelric used to sound. All of you. The Council has ordered complete decontamination. We are not contaminated, Nelric replied. We have evolved. Devolved, Vox corrected. The changes in your neural patterns show regression to primitive states. States our species moved beyond millennia ago. Nelric took a step forward. Have you experienced music here, Commander? Have you tasted their food? Have you looked at their art and felt something stir inside you? I would not allow such exposures, Vox stated. Then you cannot understand what has happened to us. Nelric reached into his pocket and removed a small device. This contains brain scans of our team, before and after our time on Earth. Yes, there are changes, but look closely at which areas have activated. Vox took the device reluctantly and examined the data. His expression remained unchanged, but Nelric noticed his eyes widen slightly. These are not new neural pathways, Vox said finally. They are dormant ones, now active. Exactly, Nelric agreed. Not contamination, reawakening. These capacities were always part of us, just suppressed. The Council tells us emotional responses are primitive. But what if they are essential? What if in evolving beyond them, we lost something vital? Vox set down the device. The Council's decision stands. You will return. Nelric had expected this. Vox was a soldier, bound to follow orders without question. Yet Nelric had to try one more approach. Before you enforce that decision, there is something you should see. Nelric activated his communication device. Susan, we are ready. The door opened and Susan Grant entered carrying a small box. Behind her came Diane Wright, Catherine Bell, and John Rivera, the humans who had worked most closely with the Astrian diplomats. Commander Vox, Susan said with a respectful nod. Ambassador Nelric suggested you might wish to see some examples of human culture before concluding your mission. Vox stiffened. That is unnecessary. Just one experience, Nelric urged. To understand what you would be taking from us. John Rivera opened the box and removed a small container. This is called chocolate, he explained. A simple food, but one that brings pleasure to nearly all humans. Catherine Bell placed a small, painting on the table. This is a copy of a work by one of our greatest artists, showing our planet as seen through human eyes. Diane Wright set down a small music player. And this contains what we call music, our attempt to express feelings through sound. Vox looked at these offerings with suspicion. This is irrelevant to my mission. Is understanding not relevant? Nelric asked. You are here to retrieve diplomats who have changed. Don't you want to know why we choose to stay even knowing the consequences? Susan stepped forward. Commander, we understand your concern for your people, but please consider that they may have discovered something valuable, something that could benefit all Austrians. For a long moment Vox was silent. Then, to everyone's surprise, he picked up the chocolate. He examined it carefully. It cannot harm you, John assured him. We've confirmed compatibility with your biology. Vox hesitated, then placed a small piece in his mouth. His reaction was subtle. Just a slight widening of the eyes, a small intake of breath. But to Nelric, who knew how Austrians controlled their expressions, it was like watching an explosion. What is this sensation? Vox asked quietly. Pleasure, Nelric said. Simple physical pleasure. Something our species engineered out of ourselves in the name of progress. Vox moved to the painting next, studying it with new interest. Then, with visible reluctance, he activated the music player. The room filled with a simple melody, a piano piece by a human composer named Chopin. As the music played, Nelric watched Vox carefully. The commander stood rigidly at first, but gradually, almost imperceptibly, his posture softened. When the piece ended, the room fell silent. This changes nothing, Vox said finally. But his voice lacked conviction. It changes everything, Nelric countered. You've now experienced a fraction of what we have discovered here. Imagine what else there might be. Vox turned away, his internal conflict visible despite his efforts to hide it. The Council will not accept this. Then help us make them understand, Nelric urged. Not as a defiance of their authority, but as a discovery that could benefit our entire species. The humans exchanged hopeful glances as Vox seemed to consider this. What do you propose? He asked finally. A compromise, Nelric said. Allow those of us who wish to stay to remain as permanent representatives on Earth. Those who wish to return may do so. And you, Commander, will take our findings back to the Council, not as a warning, but as an opportunity. Over the next hour, they worked out the details of this plan. Vox would return with Valerian and the diplomat who wished to leave. He would present the brain scans and other data to the Council, suggesting not contamination but rediscovery of suppressed aspects of Austrian biology. Most importantly, Vox agreed to recommend continued diplomatic relations with Earth, with regular rotation of personnel to prevent isolation of those who remained. It was a small victory, but a significant one. As they concluded their agreement, Susan turned to Nelric. Do you think the Council will agree to this? They will be cautious, Nelric admitted. But they are not unreasonable. If Vox supports our findings, they will at least consider the possibility that what has happened to us is not a threat. Later that day, they all gathered at the landing field. The Austrian ship prepared for departure, now carrying Vox, Valerian, and one other diplomat. The rest would stay on Earth. As Vox prepared to board, he paused and looked back at Nelric. I still do not fully understand what has happened to you, he said, but I will convey your findings accurately. Nelric nodded. That is all we ask. There is one more thing, Vox added, his voice lower. The music. Could I take some with me? Nelric smiled, an expression that now felt natural to him. I have prepared a collection for you, and some chocolate as well. As the ship lifted off, Nelric stood with his team and their human friends, watching it disappear into the clouds. None of them knew what the Council would ultimately decide, but they had won time. Time to continue exploring what it meant to be both Austrian and emotional beings. What now? Zephyr asked, standing beside him. Now we truly begin our mission, Nelric replied. Not just to observe humanity, but to learn from them, and perhaps to help them learn from us. In the months that followed, the remaining Astrian diplomats became celebrities on Earth. They appeared on television, gave lectures at universities, and collaborated with human artists and scientists. They became a bridge between two very different ways of being. And on their homeworld, something unexpected happened. The Council, after reviewing all the data, authorized a limited cultural exchange program. Selected Astrians would visit Earth for brief periods to experience what their diplomatic team had discovered. The first group arrived 6 months later. As they descended from their ship, Ambassador Nelric waited to greet them. Behind him stood Diane, Catherine, John, and many other humans who had become his friends. The new arrivals looked exactly as he had upon his first arrival, composed, reserved, emotionless. But Nelric knew that would soon change. They had come to Earth, and like those before them, none would return unchanged.